I'm Sam Bushman.
And Daniel Morrison.
For Why So Blues review of Matt Hazzard, Bloodbath and Beyond for the PlayStation Network.
Bloodbath and Beyond is a really great throwback to the whole 2D shooter genre, I think. Which this kind of includes games like Contra, Duke Nukem 2, Jazz Jackrabbit, and just Castlevania, I guess, as well.
What is it about Matt that really stands out, makes it different?
Well, first, I think is that it's not like a team game like Little Big Planet is. This is just a really kind of hardcore game where you're just trying to kill people. It's bloody, it's messy, it's difficult, and it really just kind of has that classic appeal to it.
I have to agree with you on that. I mean, there's a lot of fast-paced action going on, whether it's bullet dodging, platforming, and hordes of enemies, and a variety of weapons that are most part meant to do different actions within the game. Look at games like Contra, they have a spread fire and a pocket fire, and Matt Hazzard tried to do a lot of the same thing.
The pacing's very nice and fast. It really kind of has that keep-on-going appeal. It's just very straightforward and shoot them till they're dead kind of thing.
It makes it all about the action, all about the
Yes.
shooting. I mean, you get a lot of those previous side-scrollers that they try to implement RPG elements and other things to try to change up the genre, but I guess like you were just saying what makes it good, it goes back to the roots. It's all about running and gunning. The first thing that really stood out to me about Matt Hazzard was the kind of grit-your-teeth difficulty it introduced. There's a lot of tension throughout each of the levels because of how hard the enemies are and how easy it is to die, and that made success a lot more satisfying. And you had a lot of moments where you're sitting there doing kind of limbos under your bullets, jumping over things, and really trying to stay quick on your feet in order to get through the level. And also, every boss had a different pattern and a different puzzle to be solved with how to accomplish your task, how to beat the boss. And this really kept me on the edge of my seat the whole time, my teeth clenched, and just praying for success.
Yeah, this game had a very unique difficulty that has kind of been lacking from games recently.
Yeah, I'd say that. I mean, there's been a lot of games that have been tamed in the past few years that have been about completing the game. No one necessarily wants the player to have to work hard to beat the game.
Another thing I really liked about this game was how many pop culture references they just made. This game ripped off other video games, which is one thing that I found really hilarious. There is this whole section that is nothing but Team Fortress 2. Then you got kind of the thing that goes back into Portal, and you got Mario bricks going around and vines going up, and then the enemies start falling out. It's just so outrageously funny how they just added all these things. You got Back to the Future references, like Charlton Heston Western kind of references going on. It just had so many kind of funny references and one-liners. It was just an amusing thing to watch the whole time.
Now, I don't know about you. The hazard time element of this game was amazing. I've found a lot of situations where I've been low on health and just waiting for death to come knocking on my door. And all of a sudden my hazard meter would be up all the way, I'd go invincible, have spread shot available with my current weapon, and just absolutely go to town. I really loved how this mechanic was implemented.
I think this goes back to another thing, it's kind of like the old kind of classic platformer thing. It's basically based on combos. The better you're doing, the more it gives to you. So if you're killing everyone, it's just wiping the floors with everyone, you start getting like this invincibility. It just keeps rolling. You can't be stopped as soon as you start going. As soon as you start getting hurt, you pretty much die.
You know, for everything I really liked about Matt Hazzard, the one thing that really grinded my gears was the length. A lot of commercial titles, I would expect at least 12 hours out of it, and that's even kind of cutting it short. Matt Hazzard did over 5 hours. To top it off, there were no real unlockable levels or items. Besides a couple, throwbacks to some of those old games that were only a paragraph in length, there wasn't that much replay value. You could go through and memorize the levels if you really had fun with the game, or for your standard class audience, play through it once and you're done.
I think it still had a very good value. It still had, for what it's worth, over like 3 hours of gameplay, and it's not a full price title.
That's true, but still, it's a commercial title. Even at $15, I don't want to buy a mini game. I want to buy a full price game that's maybe budget in terms of some of the technology, maybe it's a new startup developer, but I don't expect that the price being enough to say, screw you, 5 hours of gameplay.
I think it's a lot more solid game than things like Portal. This game had a pretty good amount of time on it. Portal, if you bought it with outside of Orange Box, was $15 if I remember right, and it's only a half hour. So at that point, I think you get a lot better deal with this. You have the environments on this game are absolutely astoundingly nice. They're so unique. Each level has a unique appeal to it. It's not the same game per level. One thing that kind of bugged me about this game is while it did emulate the good classic controls, it could have really done better probably with a more modernized control scheme, especially considering that the controller it was using had 2 analog sticks. I mean, this game really took with the whole pure, like almost Contra-like control system where you have your movement left and right and up and down, go ahead and control your shooting. So at that point, it just felt that there should be an option to keep in that control scheme.
I think one major issue for why they couldn't have done that is simply the fact they're using base buttons. If you're aiming with one and moving with the other, how can you jump and shoot?
They used your shoulder buttons to go ahead and toggle on your aiming mode, which stops your player. But they wouldn't have to do that if they went ahead and had the aiming on the other analog stick. Thus, you could go ahead and put the 2 binds that were there onto your triggers. So they could have done it.
Personally, I didn't have a big issue with it. Playing through it, I thought the controls were just fine, and I really didn't have to aim that much unless I was doing a really long-distance skilled shot, which didn't require me to do that much anyway. I thought the controls, just fine. I slid right into it. Now, I know I said that a wide variety of weapons that serve different functions as part of that throwback that you were mentioning earlier when I was agreeing with.
Yeah.
I don't think Matt Hazzard did that as well as it could have. A lot of the weapons in this game were simply shoot straight a projectile and let the projectile hit it, and the power-up merely modified how much damage it did. You had 1 or 2 exceptions, like I guess the rocket exploded and the shotgun had some spread, but other than that, they're mostly straight-up projectiles. The only spread you got was from the Hazzard time, and while I like Hazzard time, I wish there would have been a dedicated spread weapon like there's in Contra and a lot of those other games.
Yeah, I think it did kind of go with too many weapons that were kind of linear, but it still had the weapons you expected. You got a flamethrower, you got a rocket launcher, you got a machine gun, and a shotgun. Then you got a laser rifle, which is pretty cool, and I personally think it was a little bit more unique on that. And the plasma was basically a machine gun, but still.
I mean, I guess I can see where you're coming from. The laser was unique, it shot straight ahead and had a large distance on it, but I guess overall I'm still missing my spread weapon. And you have stuff like the shotgun that had a very short range, but you look at games like Contra, they still have that 3-way shot. And while Hazzard Time included that, I wanted a dedicated weapon. Maybe Hazzard Time could have instead just enhanced any given weapon you got instead of just giving it 3 shots.
While the bosses were really fun, they had really cool patterns and stuff, some of them had a lot of meat on them. They would just take a lot of bullets relentlessly for about 10 minutes sometimes to kill.
Yeah, it sounds like you're kind of talking a little bit more about the final boss than anybody else. I think that was the meatiest out of all of them.
Out of all, that one was substantially meatier than anything else. I think that had probably more than like twice the health of any other enemy we ever faced in the whole game. But even then, it just felt that some of the bosses just had a little bit more health than they really could have gone off with, because they'd go through their cycles, and eventually you started feeling their cycles. And if you get into that point, you've pretty much kind of gone beyond what the boss should have had. One thing that also bothered me about this game, beyond just meaty bosses, was cheap one-shot kills. Like, you'd be going, and finally something hits you, and you die immediately.
That's part of the game, man! One-shot kills, you live and you learn. They give you 5 lives per continue.
I guess, but still, there was a few times that you had bullets that were stacked on top of each other, that you couldn't see that it was going to hurt you double as much as it usually does, and like sometimes they pulled some pretty cheap tricks on you. Originally, when I was going ahead and thinking about this game, I thought it's probably only worth about $10. But then the more I thought about it and looked at other kind of entertainment things that we could do, I think $15 is a reasonable price for this game. To buy like a movie on the PSN network is about $15. So you could either watch this movie for 2.5 hours or play this game for 4 or 5 hours. So I think it still is good value. It's hilariously fun. It's entertainment. It's like an 80s action film. And I think it's worth it.
For me, overall, At Hazzard was a really fun game to play with a buddy. And that was the most important part of it to me. It had its big action moments. It had enough weapons to get good by. I had my complaints. There's a few small nitpicks. But otherwise, I thought it was a fun title to play with other people. It was a throwback, and you said 80s movie. I would say more like 80s game. And because of how the pros outweigh the cons, it's easily worth the $15 price. Due to the content limit, I don't think I paid much more than $15, so I think the price was just right. Thanks for watching our review. If you have any comments, questions, or concerns, we have a comment section at the bottom of the page, and please visit some of the other articles on whysoblu.com.